Welcome to a Cofi with the FinTech Pod. We'll explore the latest trends, innovations, and ideas shaping the financial industry. Join host Alex Irigoyen as he interviews leading experts in the field. Learn from top CFO, tech leaders, investors, and many more. Join us and get inspired. Let's get started.
Hi everybody and welcome to a new episode of A Coffee With. Today we have with us Gregg Kirk. Gregg, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. How it's been the week so far? Friday finishing already?
Yeah, it's always a busy week. Whether it's you're getting your day-to-day tasks done, you have things with kids, driving them around, like you're an Uber driver. But it's always great to make it to Friday and hit the weekend. So
Awesome. Great. So thank you very much, Gregg, for joining us today. First of all, we would like to hear about your experience. Very great trajectory in finance from college all the way to these days. I don't know if you could share some context of how did you start in the finance industry, let's say, all the way till today.
yeah, not a problem. So out of college, I went to Michigan State for undergrad, and my major there was business administration pre-law. So I had aspirations to be an attorney. I have an uncle who has his own law firm, and kind of was thinking about doing that all through college. Decided near the end of college, undergrad, I didn't want to go to more school. I just wanted to get out in the real world and make money, and found a job at the time, Anderson Consulting, which turned into Accenture, and it was a internal finance role. So I would go out. They would have large implementation projects, and at the time, it was web-based, and the internet was just kind of blowing up, obviously, and it was a lot of like the dealer connection stuff where they would put dealers together, and as far as inventory and things like that. So a lot of internal projects where we were managing the financials for those, whether it was profitability and revenue and all that, and did that for a while. It was an internal role. Then moved on to I got a little taste of doing client work and client facing work when I was there, and moved into a few M&A roles. Kind of pursued those early on in my career, where did a lot of M&A due diligence work on buy side M&A. So we would go work with clients, look into their target companies that they wanted to purchase, and really kind of go from the top down, all really pick apart these different companies that they wanted to purchase for their own decision making and research on those companies to whether to buy or not, and then to also provide them the documentation that was required from the banks to secure loans and to secure funding for those acquisitions. It was at that time. It was during when I moved. I was at a regional firm in the Midwest, Plant Moran. Loved it there, and all of a sudden we had the banking crisis in 2008, where our book of business pretty much dried up, and kind of caught in, hey, there was no work, there was no business, and moved on to more internal finance roles. I was at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Then I was at Deloitte for a number of years, where kind of got promoted through their internal finance, global finance group that we called it, where I managed our FP&A group. They were out of India, and it was managing just for the whole global practice, and then eventually made it my way to a controller for their global consulting group. And then from there, moved on to Maserati, a little bit different, where it was, a dedicated, finance role as well in the manufacturing realm, obviously, and automotive, and then a little bit of IT, and then to education. So bounced around a lot, really kind of a lot of the same roles, but with different companies, and kind of, expanding my knowledge that way. And it's been definitely a crazy journey, but it's been very rewarding and fulfilling. So I got to, along the way, meet a lot of great people and experience a lot of different things.
No, that's definitely an incredible journey. Which one would you say that you learned the most? In which one
Good question. I would say early on, the two places would be Accenture and when I moved on later in my career at Deloitte. Accenture because I was so new, kind of getting into the real world on how corporations work, how being professional in meetings and learning to ask the right questions and learn to really be a sponge that early on in your career to learn different processes and how executives work. And then, being at Deloitte really there allowed you really to expand your breadth of knowledge and really expand your wings on really owning what you did as almost like your own part of your business. And really that, I wouldn't say forced me, but it taught me to really take ownership of what you were doing, of your role, that what you were doing on a day-to-day basis
Yeah.
really helped some major decision makers. So those would be the main two.
Yeah. So, would you recommend starting early your career in a consulting firm like Big Four or Accenture? Because many times young people they're between, let's say, okay, do I go to a startup? Do I go to a smaller business where I can see an overview of a whole company, or do I pursue a career or at least the first year in a Big Four consulting? Would you suggest going to in the consulting path?
Probably because I did that, I would say the consulting part because you worked for Deloitte, but you also worked for clients. Like I was out, at the time, Daimler Chrysler it was called before it turned into FCA, before it's now Stellantis and Ford Motor Company. So two companies that were competitors in the same industry, but very different on how they ran their business. And it was a lot of day-to-day shifting gears and kind of always thinking on your feet, which kind of threw you in the deep end at first, and kind of right out of your career, and you had to learn while doing. I think at a startup gives you that as well because there's a lot of maybe not processes in place at a startup where you have to create things and establish things. So but I would just from a familiarity standpoint, I really enjoyed my time right at the beginning because you got to see how businesses work and how different businesses work and how people worked and all that. So it was very, very beneficial early in my career.
Yeah. Which one would you say that it's been the toughest experience, or at least the hardest, maybe with the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, right?
I would say during that time where I moved from an internal finance role to more of client facing when I was at Plant Moran, I spent a little bit of time at Grant Thornton as well, which is a larger, wasn't Big Four, but it was, you might as well call it a big five or six, right? With
Yeah.
with the E&Y and PwC as well. Really kind of going from your kind of little protective shell internal finance where, yeah, you still had deliverables, you still had to meet deadlines, and you still had to do all that. Now you went client facing and you had the demands of a client where they're calling you, at whatever time at night because something either happened or a partner realized that, hey, we want to go this direction, with their M&A activity, or we found this out and we have to, adjust our reporting and a lot of thinking on the fly, which kind of really opened my eyes, kind of, at first it was a little bit of a shock because, like I said, I was in my little shell and managing, kind of almost like from a project management standpoint, an internal finance role. All of a sudden, you have these, demands of clients, which, were always valid that you just had to make sure you took care of.
And then I'm very curious about your experience in Maserati. How is that? How do
It
you feel
it was
that?
it was fun because when I joined Maserati, their U.S. headquarters were in New Jersey and Inglewood Cliffs, and they were moving once they were purchased and they got brought into at the time FCA. Everything was moving from New Jersey to Auburn Hills, Michigan, where it's literally down the road where I live now. Um, so it was every week traveling to New Jersey to assist with that transition. So I managed their treasury, really everything treasury as well as dealer financial reporting, where they had a dealer network of about 130, 135 dealers across the U.S. and Canada, managing their financials, profitability, and then also top line as well from a revenue perspective. So it was fun. It was a great experience, kind of being on a team, away from home. To kind of go out to, we were going to New York City every week, so that was fun, but it was also a lot of hard work too. There's a lot of hours and kind of making that transition. I think we, as a team, we did that well. We had a pretty strong team to do that, and it was pretty seamless. It was good, and it was a newer industry for me. The automotive. You think, living in Detroit and working in Detroit your whole life, you'd really have experience with that, but I really didn't. A little bit at Ford and at Chrysler when I was there, but not really directly, with them. It was more of, like I said, a project management role, where Maserati was, hey, you're reviewing inventories, you're reviewing sales forecasts and things like that. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm curious, Greg. Is it very different the P&L of let's say Ford, for example, that you mentioned, to a luxury car company? In the sense, are the ratios of the P&L, cost of goods sold, expenses similar, or let's say in the case of a luxury car, they have a much higher gross margin and a bigger percentage of marketing, or how are they compared in that sense?
Yeah, and I think the bottom line with, whether it is more of the luxury luxury automobile luxury automobile company versus a larger company like a Ford, where at the bottom line, I think both companies are really focused on cost management, cost containment. Obviously, the margins are higher on a luxury brand like Maserati, but at the end of the day, the focus always is on costs, and that's kind of what I realized, especially at Maserati, and when I was there and saw the P&Ls, directly, and that was always a focus. Obviously, the sales were and revenues were, but it was really maintaining cost to maintain the margins.
And in terms of supply, for example, of course, a company such as Ford, they will try to sell as many cars as possible. But in the case of a luxury car brand, are they trying to sell also as many cars as possible? Are they trying to keep that that supply right, more limited, so they can create that sense of exclusivity? For example, I think Ferrari does something similar, where they, or Bugatti, for example, I think that they don't produce a larger amount of cars, even though they probably going to have the demand for buying them. Is it something similar like that?
Yeah, I would say it's not too similar. So it's even from, down to the marketing perspective, obviously, and where, you see a Ford commercial or a GM commercial or a Stellantis commercial. You see them a lot on TV. Maserati, not so much. So it was really tailored to those areas, those niche areas where, like a New York City, a Miami, a Los Angeles, where it was very, very targeted, and the scope of it was a lot smaller, and it wasn't, they knew, the niche market of, hey, they're not going to sell, you know s- so many cars like they are, from a larger manufacturer. It was a lot more for, smaller, and it was a lot more targeted, on that. And they, adjusted inventory levels and sales levels to match that, knowing that, you're probably going to sell a lot more Maseratis in Miami and Los Angeles, right, than you are in kind of like Middle America or the Midwest. And yeah,
Yeah,
there were dealerships, and that, those cars would sell there, but it was very targeted to those specific areas.
yeah. And it's always through dealership that these type of cars are sold, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it was, they had, different models where they, I wouldn't say it's mass produced, but they produced more of the say like the Ghiblis, which was like the main car for Maserati, the main, coupe, if you call it. Then the Levante, which was their SUV. Those would be produced out of Italy. They would be, shipped over, to the U.S. And then as you got into the really high end ones, those are more, you know, custom made, or, not like a Bentley is custom made, but it was more like they kind of picked picked and choose where those would be manufactured and how many. So
Yeah, super super interesting. And
it
for
was
example,
interesting. It was definitely it was fun to learn about that, and it was good.
and is the finance department similar to any other company? Because at the end of the day, finance is going to have their data, their reports, their budgets, their plans. So that from the outside, is it similar or it's
It,
different
a l-
from the company?
Similar, and can kind of comparing it to the other companies where I worked. It was more focused and obviously a lot smaller. We would partner a lot with headquarters in Italy, their finance team, on forecasts and targeting where sales are going to be in, say, like a 3 month plan, that tight, up until like a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan, kind of ran the gamut of that, and it was a little bit smaller where it was more everyone had a targeted role. We had the traditional, AP person, we had the AR person, we had a controller and a CFO that, oversaw everything. I was a little bit part of that off to the side because I don't have a ton. I know enough, basic CPA accounting work to be dangerous, right? But my role is more on the analytical side, where I was part of that kind of leadership team too, but I had my role as well. So it was almost like, I don't say it was siloed, but everyone kind of had their plan. Where something like Deloitte, everyone kind of jumped in, rolled up their sleeves, and did a little bit of everything.
Very very interesting. You just mentioned, Greg, analytics. I know you're passionate about data and data management, getting those insights for the business. How do you see now the trends for the future? I wanna ask you about AI. How do you see that it's going to affect the office of the CFO and the finance team?
Good question. I don't want to sound like a dinosaur or anything like that, but AI is just so new to me. And the way I look at analytics is it's telling a story, right? It's the story behind the numbers. It's the story of why sales have been increasing or decreasing the past few months. Why has profitability gone up? What's driving that? What costs are driving that maybe a company is incurring or they're not incurring. It was almost like in a state the obvious, it was a manual process where you'd get the results and you talk to those stakeholders of that business to say, hey, what went on here last month? It's looks like we're down from, same month last year. What's driving that? Or we increased a lot. What's the good news? What's driving that? I think with AI, just from the limited knowledge that I have and I've seen with it, it's going to be interesting to see how, say you have results 1 month, how you could translate that and tell AI to say, okay, give me the drivers of this, of why this is happening, and to have it kind of spit something out at you. And obviously it's, having that finance background for so long, it's like, hold on a second, let me read through this to make sure this is right and not take it at face value. So I think that's going to be some of the challenges where I think there would be opportunity for people to kind of maybe take the easy way out and just really lean on AI, which, there's definitely would be good things about it. I think still that you still need to have that knowledge base and of your business, of, finances in general, that P&L knowledge and balance sheet knowledge, to really kind of take a look at it to say, okay, is this really true what AI is telling me, and to kind of double check that. So I think, some people may just, which I think wouldn't be the best idea, take it at face value, but I think you really have to challenge it in a way, and to really, look into it to say, hey, is AI telling us what's really happening with the business? Because it's finance being at the heart of everything. It creates it helps decision makers make major decisions for their company, whether to increase production, to decrease production, and it goes down to staffing levels, right, and people's jobs at the end of the day as well too.
Awesome.
So really, it's different with the AI. It's something that is so new. I don't know. It's almost, scary. We'll see. I don't want to sound like my parents, my older parents, when they get an email or go online or whatever. I don't want to sound like that with AI, but who knows? We'll see.
So let's imagine, Greg, we have a company, 10 people in the finance team, same revenue, same size, everything. After 5 years, how many people are still in that finance team? Did the AI took some positions? Are there even more roles in finance? What's your guess?
I got my guess, and hopefully, because I mean, sounding a little bit old school or whatever, I would think, hey, you don't want to make have too many people, have too many cooks in the kitchen, but if you can get efficiencies out of AI and legitimate efficiencies and how you're doing, yeah, obviously it would help in, maybe eliminating some of those roles that aren't as critical as maybe they are right now. And obviously that's a cost savings. At the end of the day, everyone's trying to run a profitable business, and having, AI help you do that, I could definitely see, unfortunately, where maybe some roles may be eliminated where it's just, hey, AI is taking care of that.
So from 10, we have how many people left in 5 years? Give us,
I,
give us a
I
number.
would, I would say I don't want to, cut it in half, but it all depends on the specific role of what someone's doing. Obviously, you need to have gatekeepers, right? Whether, and with internal controls. I would say maybe like 6 or 7. I don't want to say like, I don't think, in that short a time frame, a lot of major companies are really going to jump on it. Maybe they are with AI. I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be a drastic cut, because I think also, there's that internal control perspective too of who's doing what and maintaining those, right? So just in the areas of whether it's Sarbanes-Oxley or any type of, items where you could create fraud, or someone can manipulate something with AI. I think those are some of the risks that definitely need to be addressed.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate your bed in here. You giving us a number. We'll review the interview in 5 years to see if you were right or not.
Come find me. Yeah, we'll see if it rings true.
Awesome. So I also wanted to ask you, for young people starting their career in finance. You mentioned that Accenture, Deloitte, Big Fours could be a good option in terms of the path, right? Let's say in terms of what job do I apply to. In terms of skills, what would you suggest to young people starting now in, let's say, senior or junior year of college? What the skills should you learn to have a successful career in finance?
Yeah, a few things. So I obviously, your classes that you're taking. So, accounting, finance classes, economics, just so you can see how business works, how supply and demand works. Sounds obvious, but it really rings true. And, obviously, you have to take the prerequisites, but seek out those classes where, it's specific to different accounting principles and finance principles. I would start interning as early as possible. Just so when you get into the quote unquote real world, you kind of have a little bit of an idea of how businesses work. And, I think I interned for an insurance company back when I was in college, and it was invaluable. Just, I was literally filing papers and doing data entry things. And it was a lot of, menial tasks, but it just kind of, I was sitting at something small. I was sitting at a desk. I was, working with, a manager, and they were telling me how to do things. And you're just building, a rapport with somebody and those relationships. So I think the classes in college, and definitely taking, an internship, each summer is invaluable. And then once you get in the real world, it's not being afraid to ask questions, and understanding that that person you're asking a question to, whether it's a senior manager, a vice president or a director that they were in your shoes before, and any good leader will understand that there's no dumb questions. It's someone learning, and I would rather have someone out of college that say is working with me to ask me the most basic questions, because that shows me that they're interested, they're invested in themselves and the company and learning, and that's that would be the main thing, and is being a sponge on trying to get yourself into meetings as much as possible, asking if you could just attend to listen in on meetings, whether you're not going to have any input, that's great, but just understand that, hey, it's even listening in on an exec meeting or something like that is just invaluable in later on in your career.
Awesome, super good insights. Much appreciated them, Greg. So I don't want to take more of your time, Greg. It's Friday, so it's good for today. I appreciate a lot the time you have taken to being here with us today, and looking forward to chat again soon.
Thanks, Alex. I really appreciate the time, and yeah, let's connect in a few years. We'll see if my AI prediction is true or not.
We'll see.
Right.
I bet you're going to be pretty close to it.
Yeah, right. We'll see. So thanks again, Alex. I appreciated the time. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Greg.
thank you.